now is the time for us to talk about perfect pecs. That's right. We're getting to that point where summer is just on the horizon. Summer is just around the corner. And lads, dudes, you want to get those pecs out. You want to get those boobies, those man boobies out on show for you to strut around and impress the ladies. But let's face it, ladies, they're probably not impressed by your man boobs. Maybe the other guys in the gym are actually more impressed by your man boobs. But either way, you want some chesticles. You want some Batman-like boobies to bust out of your t-shirts and to, really impress your lads in the gym with how perfect your pecs are. So that's what we're going to cover right now. We're going to break down the anatomy of your pec, what it does, how to get the most out of your exercises by knowing what it does. Then we're going to talk about some exercises, good exercise selection, how to build a good workout for your chest. Then we're going to be talking about how to set up for a couple of key different exercises. And then I'm going to walk you through my own chest workout, or one of the chest workouts that I do, and explain why I put it together the way I have. So let's get cracking with building your set of perfect pecs. So first of all, let's talk about the anatomy of the pec. Now, the pec we're talking about in terms of what you're visually going to see, we're pretty much talking about pec major, which is basically the big one across the front of your chest here. Now, this attaches in two places on your upper arm. Now, that we'll talk about why that's important in a few minutes' time. But essentially, just think about the top of your bicep basically is going to attach in two places there. And then you've got, it originates in a couple of different places as well. Well, a few more than a couple, but we'll kind of keep it simple. So down the middle of your sternum, down the middle of your chest, you've got your chest bone, your sternum. That's where part of it originates, so all the way down there. And then you've got across your clavicle as well. You've got collarbone as well. It originates there. There are some other places, but they're the two main ones we're going to focus on. So think about this as a fan-shaped muscle. It's big, it stretches across a big part of your upper chest, and it really is basically quite a huge muscle. Now, it's not the only muscle that's involved in helping you to get bigger pecs, though. Obviously, you've got a bit of shoulder in there, you've got a bit of tricep in there. You've also got to think about, you've got this muscle called the serratus anterior, which if you ever think about boxers, it's that kind of, those muscles that basically look like they've got an epic six-pack. That kind of helps with stability and force production when you're doing bench presses and exercises such as those. And then you've also got the muscles of your delt, the muscles of your shoulder, which help provide stability and pretty much avoid your shoulder popping out while you're doing various different exercises, which is not good. So if you want stability, then you've got to think about more than just your pec, more than just your pec major that you want to work. You've got to make sure that your workout and your workout program, your training program looks at all these different muscles as well and is very complementary. Now, we're not going to cover those exercises specifically in this little bit of training. We're just going to be focusing on the pec. Now, let's think about what the pec actually does. So as I mentioned before, it attaches in two places on your upper arm, so kind of up here. And then what the job is, if you imagine you had a little bit of rope attached to those points where it's attaching at the top of your bicep, and if you were to pull on those back to the origin, so back towards the center of your chest, basically what is going to happen is that your arm is going to come across your chest. So that's going to be some adduction, as would be the posh term for it. So pulling on that muscle and you're going to get some adduction. So basically think about your bicep is going to be coming across your chest. That's the job of the pec major, is to bring that upper arm across the front of your chest. And you can kind of get to a point where if you try and bring your arm across your chest as far as possible, that's basically as short as we call it, so as contracted as you're going to be able to get that muscle. So that's important to know. It's important to know that that is what's happening. That's what's happening to your muscle. That's what the pec is actually doing. And knowing that helps you to avoid some of the common problems that you see in the gym where dude gets under the bar, cranks out a bunch of bench presses, gets off of that bench, and then starts holding the front of his shoulder saying, oh yeah, that was a good set. That was a good set. Well, probably it wasn't a good set. It might have been a good set for your shoulder and fucking up your shoulder joint, but probably not a good set for your chest. And that's why you're a little bit deficient when it comes to good man boobage. Now, let's think about positioning and range of motion. So if you think about, we've got this muscle that originates in a couple of different positions. It attaches on the upper arm up here. So if you just think about these muscle fibers, it's a big fan-shaped muscle. There's all these fibers are running in different directions, and you've got to work that muscle and work those muscle fibers within all of those different directions. So you think you've got ones that are going up towards your collarbone, so they're going to be sort of your upper chest, and then you've got ones that are going to be across the center of the chest, and then so on and so forth. So you've got to find ways to basically get exercises that work the muscle in multiple different directions, multiple different planes. That's the key thing. Now, you've also got to think about the range of motion. So as I talked about before, when you bring your arm across your chest, there's a point at which you can't bring it any further across. So that's what we call the shortened position. Now, across your chest, bring the arm across the chest, that is as short as you can get that muscle. And then if you were to go right the way back behind you, that's going to be the lengthened position. So that's stretching out that pec muscle as far as it possibly can. That's your lengthened position. And then right across the front of your chest, that's the shortened position. So that's the range of motion that you've got within this big muscle. You've got it from right back behind you to right out in front of you. And you've got to select exercises that are going to work that muscle through that full range. And then again, what I talked about before is all those muscle fibers in all of those different directions. So that's what you've got to think about when you're selecting different exercises. That's what you think about when you're actually building your workout program. Now, to think about that in terms of, you say, okay, Simon, you've got all these muscle fibers. What the fuck are you talking about? Now, basically, all you just need to think about is where is your upper arm in relation to all of these muscle fibers. So if you imagine you've got, most of them are going to go from the top of your bicep right across in a kind of a horizontal straight line into the middle of your chest. That's where most of them are going to go, a bit like that. So if you think about where your upper arm is, if your upper arm is quite close to the side of your body, when you then press forward, your actual upper arm is kind of pointing in an upwards direction and is really not going to be working those middle fibers. It's going to be working the ones that go up towards your clavicle, up towards your collarbone. So if you're trying to work the big middle part of your pec, that's going to be a bad arm position to have it sort of close to your torso, close to your body. The more elevated you make that upper arm, the more you're going to now bias the middle pec fibers. You don't want to be too high because that's going to be damaging for the shoulder joint, but you also don't want to be too low because you're not actually going to work the pec. So you've got to find, and this is going to be different for everybody, where that right point is for you. So from here, you've got this point where it attaches, and then when I press forward, I'm going to really work the middle, or the bunch of fibers that are in the middle of my pec major, and that's important. However, when you then want to come to work your upper chest and you're in a inclined position, you're basically then going to have your upper arm path go towards your clavicle and bias those fibers. So you've just got to make sure that when you're in each different position, you understand what it is you're trying to do, what it is you're trying to achieve, and then you actually position yourself to actually execute that exercise effectively. So that brings us on sweetly to exercise selection. Now, in my opinion, again, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. So one trainer might have one different approach to training your pec to me, and we both have different opinions on how to get the most out of your man boobage. But there's probably, as they say, more than one way to skin a cat. So I'm not saying my way is the only way. I'm saying it's a way, and I'm saying it is the way that I've found to be most optimal for the people that I've trained, how I train myself, and I think it gets great results. So don't shoot me if some other dude says, well, this is the best exercise for chest, and Simon said that. I don't care. Anyway, so I would say that you really want to pick at least one exercise that you can overload your chest with weight in the mid-range. So if you think back to what we talked about before, the lengthened position being right behind you, shortened position being right in front of you, that mid-range is somewhere in the middle. And you want to be able to pick an exercise where you can basically lift a shitload of weight over time, probably start out light, but over time you'll be able to move a shitload of weight in that mid-range. And that's probably going to be some form of bench press. So you're going to have either maybe a dumbbell bench press, barbell bench press, something like that is going to be within your program, so that you can really kind of work the muscle quite heavy, quite hard within that mid-range, because you don't really want to be going super heavy in the end ranges. It's just where you're a little bit more, you're less, I guess, less stable. You're maybe more prone to injury, I guess, if you're going to take it that far. You're at your slightly weaker positions for that muscle, and probably not advantageous to you to be doing it with a shitload of heavy weight. So when you've picked that mid-range exercise, then you want to pair it with other exercises that work the muscle in those other ranges. So you might do some sort of fly variation that enables you to get right into the shortened position, as we talked about. That's right across the front of your body. So again, you're pairing these exercises. So not only are you then working this muscle quite heavy within a mid-range, you're then using it, pairing it with another exercise so you can get to a more shortened position. So you're working through this full range of motion. You then want to think about maybe the upper pec as well. So if you've got a bench press that's working through the middle part of your pec, you then want to maybe then bias the upper part of your chest as well. So again, you're getting this mixture of different exercises, working different ranges of motion, you're working different muscle fibers, but you're basically working your pec through multiple different divisions. It's basically a good way to build up a good program. Now, the thing that I would say is prioritize your weakness. Most people do a shitload of bench pressing. Any dude that walks into a gym, probably the first exercises he does are a bench press and a bicep curl. That's pretty much it. Dude wants huge chest, huge arms. Therefore, I'm going to do a bunch of bench presses and I'm going to do a bunch of bicep curls. Pretty much standard issue. However, that means a lot of guys are going to have no upper chest. It's going to be very, very deficient. You're going to be a bit flat chested up here. Now, what you then need to do is say, well, okay, recognize that that's your weak point. If that is your weak point, that you haven't got an upper chest, and it's embarrassing, then focus on it. Don't then start doing shitload more bench presses in the like a flat bench position. Actually start to bias the upper pec and do it first. So if that is your issue, that you haven't got upper pec, bias that first. Set up your program so that you're doing more upper chest exercises. You're prioritizing them first. So when you're fresh, you've got loads of energy. That's what you're doing. You then might want to think about banded exercises. So if you've ever followed me on Instagram, you will see that I use resistance bands a lot to provide what we call accommodating resistance. And I'll explain what that means in a second. But arguably, versus a regular, let's use a bench press as an example, a banded accommodating resistance bench press is arguably far better than a regular bench press for building muscle. And that's what your goal is. So if your goal is to build muscle, which I'm sure it is, that's why you're here. You want to build perfect chesticles. Then you want to effectively get the most out of your training. And banded versus non-banded, arguably, in my opinion, is a better exercise. So why is that? Why is bands a good thing? So if we think about where you are strong within your pec, okay, where's your pec strongest and where is it weakest? So it's weakest when the bar is closest to your chest. That's where you're at your weaker position. Then you are at your strongest position when you've then actually performed that repetition and the bar is at its highest distance away from you. That's where you're strongest. Now, when you select a weight to lift, you select a weight that you can lift out of that bottom position. So when the bar is close to your chest, that's what's dictating how much you load onto that bar. However, because you effectively get stronger throughout the rep, in those early reps, basically you're getting a rest through half of that repetition. As it's on your chest, okay, you're working hard there. Then as you push out, you're slowly but surely actually working less. You're working less as you push that out. So therefore, in terms of building muscle, really that's the reverse of what we want to do. We want to make your chest work as hard as fucking possible throughout that entire repetition. So by selecting a weight that is effectively a little bit lighter than we can lift when we're in our strongest position, we're not providing a full range challenge, as we would call it. So if I was to be in a power rack and I were to attach a band from the top of the power rack, looping around the barbell, so that when I brought the bar close to my chest, the band engaged and started to stretch. And effectively, what that's doing is that band is providing some assistance as that bar lowers towards my chest. So as the bar comes towards my chest, it's providing me extra assistance. It's helping me lift. It's almost like having a spotter. Now, what that means is I can put more weight on the bar than I normally would without it. So when I'm down at the lowest point where the bar is close to my chest, I'm getting some assistance. However, when I press, that band gets slack and provides no resistance. So therefore, or no assistance, should I say. So when you actually then start to perform the rep, as you press that bar up, it's actually getting heavier. So as you're getting stronger, that bar is getting heavier, therefore providing you with a constant challenge to your maximal level through every inch of every rep. And that, in my opinion, is far greater for chest development than not doing it that way. And I can't see an argument for the opposite, to be honest. So banded is good. You don't have to band, but in my opinion, it is better. You then might want to think about cable flies versus dumbbell flies. So again, like another popular exercise with the guys in the gym is the dumbbell fly. So sitting in the position where you've got your arms outstretched to the side, and then you're basically bringing those dumbbells up in front of you. Now, this isn't a hugely horrendous exercise, but there are far better ones, and I'll explain why. So when you're in the position where your arms are outstretched, out wide, okay, you're providing a challenge. That's in like a lengthened position there, that's providing a challenge. As you bring those dumbbells up, now gravity starts to take effect. And when you've got the dumbbell in front of you, right up in front of you, then basically you're getting no challenge on that chest whatsoever, because the force is coming from the dumbbell through your arm into your shoulder and not actually providing any tension on your pec whatsoever. So after you've gone past a certain position, then actually you're getting no chest challenge whatsoever. So that becomes a slightly poorer exercise. You could still use it, but you would probably have to combine it with a different exercise so that you can actually get the most out of it. What might be a better choice might be a cable fly. So because the cable fly is different in the sense that the actual force is generated from a different direction, you actually get a constant challenge, because as you bring it up, so you bring that handle up in front of you, the actual cable is trying to pull you back the other way in the opposite direction to which the pec is working. So you're getting a full challenge. So you could still use a fly, but maybe a cable fly would actually be better. And obviously as well, when you do a cable fly, you can bring it right across the front of your chest if you want to. And again, that's creating that extra range of motion and again, making a good pairing of an exercise. So that's kind of our exercise selection in a nutshell. I'll come on to it in a second, what makes maybe a good program, and I'll take you through what my program actually looks like right now. The next bit is actually really kind of going back to the bench press, and one of the key things here is the setup. And this is where I like to use the lift principles that we have at Iron Paradise Fitness, which is lock it, intent, force, tension, and tempo. So lift, that is our mantra, that is our principles, that is the way we lift. So the first one is lock it. And this is talking about locking a position in place, locking your setup in place before you actually start a repetition and maintaining that throughout the course of the exercise. But in the case of the bench press, what you're trying to do is effectively pin your shoulder blades back together. And imagine trying to grip a pencil between your shoulder blades. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to pull that back and you're trying to lock that as hard as you possibly can. Now, I would suggest that you practice this outside of the gym as well, because it takes a little bit of skill and it takes actually quite a lot of strength in your back muscles to hold that position in place. You'll find that when you start to do this for the first time, you will actually feel quite fatigued in your back because you're actually really kind of holding this isometric contraction super, super hard for an extended period of time. So the more you practice that, the better at it you will get. And this is about really trying to get execution and form PBs as well as weight PBs. The harder you contract your shoulder blades and you can keep your scapula, which is what we're looking at, in place, and the harder you can contract your pecs, the better development you actually get and the more progress that you actually make. So it's important that you actually focus on this stuff. So if we pin the shoulder blades back together and you lock that position in place, you do not want to have that move in any way, shape, or form. So when you're pressing up, you don't want to have that position you've got your shoulder blades in to move whatsoever. You want to keep it locked in stone. And then you're pressing up, and you will find instantly that you're using way more chest and you're not allowing your shoulders to take over that might otherwise be happening if you didn't have that in place. When you then come to thinking about the intent, which is the I of lift, is you're thinking about right back to the beginning when we talked about biceps across chest. So the intent when you're doing a bench press is effectively to pull the upper arm across the chest. And to do that, you're just thinking about biceps going across the chest. So if you're in a bench press position, don't think about just pushing it up at all costs, because that is going to incorporate some other muscles that we don't really want to work. What we want to think about is, okay, I'm in this bench press position, and okay, I think about my biceps coming across my chest, and it creates a different intent. It creates a different motion and a different movement on that particular exercise, and it effectively makes you use the pec way, way more. And that's what we want. We want bigger man boobies. We want some booby builders, and that is going to help that do that. Then you want to generate as much force as possible. That's about growing a big nutsack and pushing some heavy weight. And then you're going to maintain tension. And then probably when you're first starting out, a good way to maintain that tension is to keep a steady tempo. Trying to rush it is probably not going to help you maintain that tension. So obviously when you start, if you maintain a constant, steady tempo, then that's going to help you learn that. As you progress, you might want to speed up certain elements of the exercise to increase tempos and things like that. I would always say like the eccentric, so lowering the bar back down to your chest or whatever exercise you're doing, it's always good to do a slower section of that movement, because that's, again, arguably that's harder. We're trying to work the muscle. So why would you speed that up and let it crush down into your chest? Again, not optimal if you're trying to build bigger chesticles. Cool. So they are the key things. There's a bunch of different exercise cues I could go into, but we probably haven't got time for that now. And it might probably need a little section of training on its own to go through some specific maybe bench press cues and things like that. So that maybe is for another time. But let's talk about how I've set up my chest workout to build my own set of perfect pecs. Because over the course, I would say, of the last 6 months, I've been really focused on, for me, chest and side delts. They've been my body parts that have been lagging in the past that I wanted to build up, and adopting the principles that I'm going to talk you through now, or I've talked through already, plus these exercises that I'm doing, have exponentially helped my chest develop way, way more than it has for the previous few years. Now, it's super simple. It's nothing complicated. All I've done is select 3 exercises. I do actually do 2 different workouts with 3 different exercises in each. So, but this is kind of like my main one. This is my bread and butter. This is the one that I would be my go-to set of chest exercises week in, week out. But I do have 2 different workouts that I rotate. Now, where I start with is a banded flat bench press. So for all the reasons I explained earlier, why you want to band an exercise, and again, flat bench, a lot of weight through the mid-range of that exercise, it's a good chest exercise to start with. Now, particularly me, I don't personally have to focus on upper chest development. That's why I do flat bench first. But you might want to do an incline bench first to bias that upper pec as your priority. I then do a seated cable fly. Again, why we were talking about before, The fly allows you to have get the muscle into a shortened position, and it provides that constant tension. For me, way better than a dumbbell. I do it seated because the bench provides a lot of stability, you'll be able to produce a lot more force with that particular exercise. So I find that one is super, super good. Then my third exercise is a banded Smith machine incline bench press. Now, previously, if any of you have listened to the podcast or read the article on my website, I basically said that Smith machines are shit and they should never be used for bench pressing. Oh, how times have changed, and oh, how the tables have turned. But hey, I'm not going to be the one to say that I never said that, but I am going to be the one that says, well, maybe people's views change, people's opinions on what is good change because they learn new stuff. They find out different stuff. They try different things and different things work, and they learn from different people. It's all part of the process. So yes, I've gone back. I do use the Smith machine now. Now that is because in this particular workout is that when I'm at my more fatigued, I'm in my third major exercise now for the chest, is that I'm a little bit more fatigued. So having to almost balance that bar is a little bit of extra effort that I'm not interested in at this part of my workout. So really is the Smith machine allows me to really focus in on some exercise cues. So for example, when I'm pressing up, I think about trying to pull my hands together physically on the bar, and that creates a little bit of extra tension. And because the bar is fixed within the Smith machine, I find I can focus on these little exercise cues better than if I was trying to also stabilize the bar at the same time. I also band it for the reasons that we've explained already, but this then just helps me to bias the upper pec fibers and get a lot more out of that. So you can see that workout really takes me through different ranges of motion. It works different fibers in the pec, and really just doing 2 to 3 working sets of each of those exercises and really working hard on those will help you build a beautiful, beautiful set of man boobies. So if you've got any questions about anything that I've gone through, then feel free to drop me a message. I'm most likely to see it and most likely to respond to you if you come and see me on Instagram. So you can find me at iron_paradise_fitness. Come say hi, come drop me a DM, say you listen to the podcast, and that will be all cool. Love to hear from you. And if you want some more guidance, maybe you want some more information, maybe you want me to steer you in the right direction to create the training program for you that will not just build a beautiful set of boobies, but it will also build you the quads, the shoulders, the back, the hamstrings, whatever it is, the sculpted, lean, healthy physique that you want, then you can click the link that I've put in the notes that will take you to my online coaching page, and maybe we can join together and I can create you the ultimate training program, plus manage your nutrition for you and get you where you want to be in the fastest possible time. But for now, all I'll say is thanks for listening, thanks for watching, keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next one.